Hello everyone, Maria Trusa with our show today, Reflect and Reset with Maria and Gina. And unfortunately today I'm missing my business partner, my partner in crime, but I am in the company of somebody very, very special, somebody very dear to me, my good friend, Amy Gould. Hi, Amy.
Hey, Maria, how are you?
I'm great. I am so happy to have Amy here. I have to tell you that I know Amy for almost 15 years, and Amy has gone through this journey of life with me and has helped me with my prenup when I got married over 12 years ago. In addition, she did my will, my healthcare proxy, insurance. You've done disability insurance, life insurance, and we were preparing for this show, and I was asking Amy. We all make New Year's resolutions, but ironically, I think some of the New Year resolutions that most people are either afraid or they just don't want to even consider is the importance of making a will. So what are the New Year's resolutions that on the list? What should go?
Well, a lot of people actually, they delay this process. They delay the process of estate planning, their wills, their trusts, life insurance, healthcare proxies. They delay it until one of two things really kind of happens. Either they have a parent or somebody very close to them who passes away unexpectedly, and they have that moment, that revelation, oh, I am in trouble here. I haven't done any of this. What if it was me that this just happened to? So it's either that, or they have a parent who has passed away and now they're actually dealing with it. They're in the thick of it themselves. But it really is something that they need to put on to everybody. They, meaning everybody, needs to put on their to-do list. If they've already done it, every 5 years, you need to really give it a second look. Because every approximately 5 years, the people in your life that you thought were the best of the best or were not in favor with you at that time have now become in favor with you. Things change. And so those changes mean that you have to sit and reflect. You have to go and revisit these things. But I kind of find that there are two reasons that we really don't do this. Either you're in the field where you think that I don't need to do this because I don't really have things to give away. I don't care. It's not a big deal for me.
Once I go, let them resolve it.
Yeah, and everybody's always going to agree completely. Right. Nobody's going to fight over anything. I mean, nobody's going to ever fight over anything. Everybody is always of that ilk. But I can tell you, there are a very significant amount of people that go and they're in this boat where they're like, I don't want to do it. Well, the problem with that kind of planning is that if you have children and you don't forget about the money. If you don't make plans for the children, putting and setting aside a person for the guardian, the court comes in and they actually make those choices for you. And that's a problem. Now you have a stranger. Now you have a court battle. Many people could be coming or nobody could be coming forward. So you put your children in a situation where now they have to go through a court proceeding at the time when they just lost their parents perhaps. Right. And it's just yet another thing that they don't need to deal with at that point. And then if you do have money that you're passing on and you've taken this hands-off approach, you are actually inviting the court to monitor their money, any money, and that means that every time you make a distribution to the child, that costs money. You have to hire an attorney. The court basically hires an attorney, and that attorney has to sign everything. And as you know, if you contact an attorney for any purpose, the moment you start talking is the moment they start billing. So just keep that in mind.
That starts eating up the money that you're leaving.
Absolutely.
And I know that people are afraid to talk about death. I remember when we did our will, and believe me, I've gone through a few different changes in my will with you. because I had a will, before I got married, and then I had a will that needed to be adjusted after I got married, and then I got divorced, and we readjusted our will,
Right.
my will too.
Right.
But ironically, when I told my kids, because you helped me organize myself everything very clear, I remember saying to my kids, okay, this is where everything is. These are my life insurance. We organized the will. I put it in the safe. This is, God forbid, anything happens to me. This is where you find it. So in my mind, I'm making life easier for my children, because when you passed, for the kids to, if that happens, right? For the kids to have to deal now with finding, did she have a will? Did she have insurance? It's chaos.
At a very bad time
Yeah.
too, where they're dealing with emotion. So this emotion is then you're topping it off with distress and trying to find things and finalize things, and all of those things have emotion tied to it as well. And I also think what you were just saying was exactly spot on. You took, when we were doing all of the planning, you showed them, you put everything right out in front of them, and for me, that's very empowering to take that superstitious portion of it. I don't really want to talk about that, and saying, you know what, it's a fact of life, and I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to deal with it on my terms.
Yes.
It's very empowering to be able to design a plan that is exactly what you really want at the end of the day, what you want.
And I love that. Number one, I do have to tell you that my kids, ironically, especially my little Jeffrey, I call him, Jeffrey was like, Mom, I don't want to know. I don't need to know. I don't care. You know what? He took this attitude, like he couldn't deal with the fact that, God forbid, like I'm talking about death. Mm-hmm. But death is a reality that we have to face.
Right.
And to plan, I mean, what I loved about your in-depth when you're doing a will is the fact that you think of every scenario. I mean, my God, if you thought, if something happens to me, Jeffrey, all my kids together,
right?
Where do we want the money to go? Because if I'm leaving the money to my kids, but my kids die in a plane with me, where do I want that money to go? So I loved the fact that it was like an endless, and we got to an end where catastrophe happens. How is my money going to be spent, after I go?
And that's part of my process, actually. Part of my process is really not, and it should be part of everybody's process. And when you are going out and you're looking for an attorney to do all of these things, one of the critical components is are they going to let you talk? Are they going to let you design a plan? Are they going to go through the what if situations with you? Do they have enough experience for those what if situations? Because there are myriad situations that you need to cross and check off those boxes, and it is not streamlined. It is not something that it's a one size fits all situation. In fact, one of the things I was thinking about as we were talking about this is how many people out there have lots of money right now, tons of money out there. And the government has put these very generous, basically tax credits available to each and every person. Now, these tax credits, although they're great, the tax credit today is not going to be the same tax credit that is going to be available in 2025. And if you follow politics at all, I mean, the thing is that the tax situation could change 2020. So you really need to make this idea of basically going and saying, well, I'm not going to be affected by it because of the tax situation. Is kind of ludicrous. I don't think the tax is going to be the same today as it is tomorrow. Today you actually can federally. You can pass almost a little bit over $11 million to basically anyone. You have $11 million credit. My spouse has $11 million credit, so we have $22 million that we can pass. So a lot of people kind of think, oh, it's not a big deal. But that credit was doubled just 2 years ago. Before then, places like...
And when you say credit, is that you can, without paying taxes on
Without
the
paying
money?
taxes, you can have that money when you pass without paying a federal tax on it. New York has its own credit, New Jersey, Connecticut, they all have their own credit, and it's a constant flux. So I don't like to do basic tax forecast planning because I don't have a crystal ball. I really don't. And nobody does. Nobody could have foreseen that 2 years ago Trump would have come in and doubled the estate tax credit. That was something we hadn't. In fact, I think New York is at this point kind of rethinking their plans given the fact that they doubled it. But to sit there and plan for taxes to be the same is fruitless. Yeah. You have to take those documents and still prepare for tomorrow. But the one good thing that you do, even if you have lots of money, you need to prepare yourself for creditors. And so one of the creditors that I think that a lot of people miss is when I give money to my spouse and my spouse goes and gets remarried, that's my creditor. My creditor is his new spouse. Because technically, I mean, most of us, we want to pass along our money, pass along the things that we've earned in this life, our legacy. We want to pass it on to our children. And so we wanted to take a stop at our surviving spouse, but most of us don't want to be so giving at our surviving spouse, new spouse. We want to make sure it stays with our children. And you have to do some careful planning to make sure that happens, because the law says that the new spouse is entitled to that money. And the new spouse has a 1/3 right to it no matter what, if we don't plan against that, if we don't plan around it. So it's very important that no matter if you have small amounts of money or large amounts of money, you have money, you have children or no children, if you have any situation that warrants some kind of protection, you need to plan for it today. And that goes as far as like the medical center. We're here at Gourmet Medical Center. And you and I both know the HIPAA laws are significant. They're not going to allow people to come in and just get access to medical records.
That's true.
And what they
power of attorney.
You need a power of attorney or a healthcare proxy.
Right.
And so the healthcare proxy is this wonderful document that basically says, in conjunction with a directive, it says, look, I'm appointing Maria to all of my medical decisions in the event that I can't do so on my own. And it also gives me an opportunity to say, in certain circumstances, I don't want continued care. Now, in every situation that you have people who are going to second guess your agent's decision to discontinue care, to pull the plug. You have people who are going to second guess that. Designing this healthcare proxy is basically a love letter to all your family that says, I have considered every option. And in these options, I want this to happen. It's taking control over your health care. And if you don't have that, given the HIPAA laws and things like that, it's very difficult to get hands on your medical records for second opinions. I mean, you could be in a vegetative state or something, and you need that second opinion.
I believe we have a question.
Is there any age to do this, or you need to be old, you need to be young? When is the best moment to do this?
You actually need to be 18. That is the minimum. You need to be 18. You need to be of majority in order to execute a will. But generally people start thinking about it when they get married or they have a child, because at that point you have a new responsibility.
But also, like, for example, my son Jeffrey is single, and he is but he does well, and so he should consider, because what happens to his money? Let's say if something happens to him.
Okay, something happens to somebody like Jeffrey. What happens is it goes by operation of law to his parents. So it goes to you, and it goes to his father. Now, whatever the situation with assets might be, he may not want that to be half and half.
So it doesn't matter if you're, married or thinking
Exactly.
of children. It's really anyone that, if you have some assets, right, or you want to decide who to leave it with, and not somebody else making the decision for you.
And it's not just someone else, it's a stranger. It's a stranger. It's the worst stranger. It's the state. Couldn't be further removed. So this is a opportunity for you to seize control over your life. So generally people people start this process after they have children or when they get married. But like Maria was saying, it could be when you get some assets under your belt and you actually have a plan. Perhaps you have an estranged father, perhaps you have an estranged mother.
Right.
And in those circumstances, do you want your estranged father to take control of those assets? Probably not. In the same vein, with regard to a healthcare proxy, if you have a parent that you would prefer to have make those medical decisions, then you need to write that down in a healthcare proxy, nominating them as the agent.
So I actually went through that process with you,
Right.
and it's a little bit difficult because I know you're looking at every scenario, as many scenarios as possible.
Right.
But I can tell you that once I signed that, there was a relief in me knowing that, God forbid anything happens to me, my kids will not have to go through what I went through with my mom.
Right.
As you recall, my mom was very sick, and I got a phone call. I didn't know what my mom would have wanted me to do, and I actually had to make the decision when they called me and said, if we don't intubate your mother, she's going to pass. She cannot breathe on her own. And I made the decision to intubate her. And I have to tell you that it was very hard for me because I wasn't sure if I made the right decision.
Right.
I questioned my decision. She lasted 2 years, but she was almost a vegetable for 2 years. And I questioned myself, and I went through a lot of pain, and I've gotten over it because I realized that I made the best decision that I could have made under the circumstances. But I promised myself that I was going to take care of that immediately because I would not want my kids to live with the conscience that whether or not they made the right decision for me.
Right.
So to know that you made your decision, and I had conversations with my pastor, it was a collective thought process, right? But it's there's such a relief in knowing that you have your life in order and that your legacy is going to be planned the way that you wanted to plan it.
That's exactly right. And going further with your mother's situation, you have been in a specific situation lately, up until recently, where you were taking care of her, and there's a whole bunch of people out there that are watching this who have parents who are aged or getting up there. And from my own experience, it doesn't take much for the ball to drop in that regard. Your parents can go from fully functioning to needing significant help within 9 months, 6 months. It could take one fall, it could take one
episode,
and pre-thinking what would happen, what do I do? They have these wonderful things out there called long-term care policies that you get to choose how you're going to help them.
I'm curious about that. Let's say, I'm 50, I'm in my 50th. Should I start with the long-term insurance now?
Absolutely.
Is it cheaper the younger you start?
Right. You are actually, it's almost like you are pre-funding the possibility, and it's a 1 in 3 possibility that you'll need help for, I believe the statistic is more than 2 years in a institutionalized capacity. So 1 in 3 of us, so there are actually 3 of us in here, and 1 of 3 of us are going to need some kind of help for at least 2 years. So you buy those policies in a way that kind of hedges against that risk. And so you can buy portions of a policy. For example, the New York dollar amount is generally in like the $350 a day is how much it would cost to take care of somebody in an institutionalized kind of way, an assisted living or nursing home or something like that. And so you can buy whatever amount of that $350 or $400 per day. You could do anything, but doing nothing means that you're going to be funding it yourself, or worse yet, your kids. Your kids. There are so many people in my own experience. My mother, when she was helping my grandmother, we were taking care of her. She actually had to go to graveyard shift. We were round the clock with my grandmother for multiple years, and it affected her health. It affected her mental state. It's just not something that if you can solve that problem now, why wait? Solve the problem when you have the capability to do it.
Yeah.
So
it's I mean, all of this estate planning, and it's critical. And unfortunately, what I find is that people have a really hard time planning, taking that first step. Like, how do you talk to your, let's say, your parents? Your parents are older. Like, I know there was a friend of mine there, they have Italian parents, and they're like, when they die, we're gonna go in the mattress. That's probably where the money is.
Where the money is.
It's like, but a lot of this, the older generation is not big into planning for a will. So how do you start a conversation with your parents about a will?
You know what I actually found is I found that if they find out you're doing it, it's almost like a monkey see, monkey do situation. And it's so very comfortable when you're asking them, because you're 100% right. That generation, they do not want to talk about it. Money is something, think about going into your mother's purse. Growing up, if I went into my mother's purse for any reason, I would have been sent back to my room. There's a very yeah, exactly. So it's a very different generation, but I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, I find that my clients, they start doing this process, and then all of a sudden their parents are calling me and saying, oh, you did my daughter's will, and I would love to hear, let's kind of talk about it. And then you have to respect the generation and make sure you're going at it a softer way. I tend to, as you know, I try to bring some levity into the situation. Yeah. It's not all doom and gloom. Like I said, it's very empowering, but I try to be a little bit more uplifting in it. And I try to scale it back a little when I'm talking to the older generation, because that's how they work. Yeah. It's a very significant step for them, and I think that it's interesting. But that's how I would definitely approach them. And if you don't have that ability, if you're not doing that, I would just maybe talk about one of their friends. I always find that anybody is more receptive to
a friend.
Do you know if so-and-so, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I saw that they did that will over there. Did they finish it? Something about, so you can get the conversation rolling. Yeah. Or using any one of the situations that go on every day in the stock market now. I mean, we are in a place right now with the stock market going up and down and all these different nuances, that we can start a conversation about finances at minimum. Yeah. At this point.
One of the things that I remember in the many ways that you've helped me, and at my church, you came to do a seminar with the church members about leaving your legacy, because my church, where I used to go for 10 years, there was a lot, or there are a lot of elderly people that don't have kids, and they don't have a lot of family. So at one point you came to talk about leaving a legacy to your church or an organization. So if you can talk about it, this is something that you can do, right?
Right. Well, one of the things that a lot of people, like you say, that a lot of people wonder about leaving gifts to a charity and things like that. Churches are charities, and you do want a legacy for each one of us, I think that that's our goal in life,
Right.
right? Is
We wanna
is
make a
kind of
difference.
make a difference, to
Yeah.
leave this world today better than you found it.
Yeah.
And in giving to your church, it is a way to give money in a tax-free way, and it benefits so many
Yeah.
different people, and it doesn't have to be to that person that a child or the second cousin 3 times removed over on this house. It could be something near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
It could be the Susan B. Komen breast cancer fund. It could be to St. Jude's. It could be to anything, but always remembering that charitable, especially this time of year, as we all
Yeah.
hear the bells ringing, just remember that those are out there. If you have nobody that you want to give something to, just remember, if you give it to nobody, the state's going to gladly take it.
Right, and they'll spend it the way they want. But at least I can tell you that one of our church members actually left $300,000 to the church. I remember, and it was desperately needed, and she was making a difference by leaving that money. But we also, think about disability insurance, which when I was very young, because I was a single mom for about 17 years, I decided that I was preparing myself. I felt, I needed to have the will, I needed to have the insurance, God forbid anything happens to me and I cannot work and I'm supporting my family. As a single mom, I think I was triggered to think, more about these things. And I got disability insurance that I still have. I keep adding.
Every
But
year.
talk a little bit about that, because if you can get disability insurance at a younger age, I mean, it's,
That is actually, and that goes for all insurance. And
that's true.
when you get insurance, number one, you are locking in your health. Today, I feel this way. Tomorrow, who knows? One bad comment to a doctor, and all of a sudden you have a rating on that, and your rates are higher. So it is imperative that when you're in good health to go ahead and get this coverage. Now, the thing is I can say your disability story is novel. Because what I actually experience with disability insurance is, you talk to the people who are 24, 25 out there, they are never, ever going to get disability insurance because they are invincible.
Yeah.
They're invincible, and nothing is ever going to happen to them that is bad, and they are definitely not getting it. But to tell you the truth, disability insurance is the most selfish insurance that there is, because when you can't work because something happened to you, you are paid. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's not, you don't need a child for it. You don't need a husband or a wife for it. You don't need anything. You just need to be paid because you can't work.
Right.
So it is actually everybody's type of insurance. Everybody needs disability insurance, and the better shape you are in terms of health and and you buy, like you said, fragments of it at any given time based upon what you're earning. So it's never more than you need, because they're not going to give you, they only can give you 60% of your maximum of your gross income. 60% is what you can cover.
Is it tax? Do you pay tax
So-
on the income?
So a lot of people have disability insurance through their employers, and that's called group disability insurance. And so that, when you receive that benefit, so let's say you get a few $1,000s a month from your group disability policy, that is taxed. However, because it's money that you're getting that you didn't actually pay into, so it's never been taxed
Got
money.
it.
However, when you buy a policy yourself, it's an individual policy, that money comes to you tax-free. That dollar feels like a dollar. That dollar is not taxed, so you are living on that dollar, every dollar. So it's a beautiful thing. So I usually encourage people to piggyback their group policy with an individual policy, because that group policy is going to be taxed, but the individual policy can take up that gap.
That's great. Well, Amy, unfortunately, my God, there is so much more that we can talk about, but we only have 30 minutes. I want to thank you for making a difference in my life, because you have.
You have made a difference in my life every day.
Thank you. Seriously, I've been so blessed to have somebody guiding me through this journey. And you have seen so many changes of my life, and now you see me at the peak. Well, there's more to come. But anyway, I'm so glad that we could share with everyone. Please think about, now that you're preparing to do your New Year's resolution, this is one that should go on your list. Start doing your estate planning. You saw that it doesn't matter. You could be 18 and moving forward. It doesn't matter if you have family or not. What it matters is that you plan how you want to impact this world when you leave, and leaving a legacy. We wish you the best for this new year, and remember to like us. And if you want information on Amy, you're going to see information on this post. She's amazing. I highly recommend her, but I can tell you, like I said, she's made a difference in my life. Anyway, thank you, and like us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.